For 6 long months, the children died, by the dozens, none of them older than the age of 5. Someone, it turned out, had put poison into their medicine. Most of the children died last year in Haiti, but the story only begins there, for this mass poisoning set off a global search led by investigators from the United States to learn who was responsible and whether more of these medicinal time bombs might be in other homes around the world. A winter day in February 1995, when the ship Neerlandia left Amsterdam port in Holland for Port-au-Prince, Haiti. In its cargo, 72 barrels, including this one, labeled as pharmaceutical glycerin, 98% pure.
I was buying, like I've been buying for the past 15 years, drums of glycerin.
Rudolf Boulos runs Haiti's biggest pharmaceutical company, Farbol. He used the sweet-tasting glycerin syrup to make children's medicine more palatable.
It's completely acceptable for the human body.
But what Mr. Boulos didn't know was that the barrels he thought contained glycerin really contained massive amounts of a poison, diethylene glycol, which looks and tastes like glycerin. Mary Pendergast is a deputy commissioner of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration.
Diethylene glycol is an industrial solvent. You probably think of it in terms of antifreeze for your car.
And diethylene glycol is a killer.
That's right. It's a killer.
Unaware of its true content, Boulos began to mix the antifreeze ingredient into thousands of bottles of children's fever medication. And then they were sold to families in Port-au-Prince and out in the Haitian countryside. By early 1996, the first children had begun to die of kidney failure at General Hospital in Port-au-Prince. By the following June, the number of dead children was pushing 80. Jacqueline Charles gave the medicine to her only child, whose condition inexplicably worsened.
She was reduced to a state where you had to move her around on the bed. There was saliva coming out of her mouth and her stomach was inflamed. Her stomach became bloated.
Unaware of the poison, Mrs. Charles had given her more of the same medicine, and she later died.
Each and every one of you have suffered a major loss.
Miami lawyer David Michel was hired by the victims' families to sue those people responsible for this mass poisoning.
You have to understand what this toxin does. Neurologically, this chemical will bathe the brain. These children started crawling. They couldn't walk anymore. They couldn't even stand up.
Rose Israel also watched her youngest child die without knowing why.
My son did not want to take the syrup, so I had 4 people hold him down so he would drink it. If I knew the syrup was poison and would kill him, I would never have made him drink it. I would rather have taken it myself.
Funeral parades like this one are part of the landscape in Port-au-Prince, where premature death can be widespread. As a result, the rising death toll of children went unnoticed for many months. There was no parade for Yolette Saint-Val's only daughter, who lived in poverty there. She came home in a cardboard box.
What is really so difficult about this for the parents is that the parents fed the poison to their children.
Oh, my. Finally, the doctors noticed that many children seemed to be dying from the same strange illness, and they wondered whether it might be something in the water, because some of the victims were from Haiti's worst slum, Cité Solez, on the outskirts of Port-au-Prince. But when the deaths reached into middle-class communities there, Haitian doctors were left groping for answers. So it was a mystery.
It was a mystery. Was it something they ate? Was it a new disease? Was it a spider bite? And what was it that was causing the children to die?
News of the mounting death toll reached Dr. David Brandling Bennett in Washington, D.C., where he works in the Pan American Regional Office of the World Health Organization. At last, a solid lead had emerged.
We got pathology, that is, we were able to get the kidney samples from some of the children and look at them. And this suggested that it was a type of illness that had been seen before.
An illness that in recent years has been caused by other medicines containing diethylene glycol, In India, in Bangladesh, in Nigeria, hundreds of children had died. In Haiti, since all the victims had taken the same fever medication, Haitian authorities asked the U.S. Food and Drug Administration and the Centers for Disease Control to investigate. Working around the clock, they discovered that the glycerin used in Mr. Boulos's fever medication was indeed full of diethylene glycol, that same antifreeze ingredient that had killed the other children around the world. Boulos got the news early one morning that he and his company, Farval, had unwittingly played a role in the deaths of at least 88 children.
June 22nd at 2 a.m. It was devastating. It was the crumbling of 25 to 30 years' work as a pharmacist. Who could do such a thing? Who could be responsible? Who could think of such a crime?
So the question then was, where'd the glycerin come from? Who made it? What happened? And is it being sold to other Farvals around the world?
Who knows how many drums full of this stuff are where at this moment?
Which is why we engage in this worldwide chase.
The FDA traced the poison back to Rotterdam, where they made a frightening discovery. Sitting in a warehouse there, awaiting shipment, were another 66 barrels of so-called glycerin, identical to the one shipped to Haiti, and they too contained the sweet and poisonous antifreeze.
And so we said, you sold it to Farval, who'd you buy it from? They said, well, we bought it from a company in the Netherlands, Voss. So we went to Voss and we said, who'd you buy it from? They said, we bought it from a company in Germany.
This is a whodunit.
It's a whodunit. It's a sleuth story.
A sleuth story with a most unexpected twist. The counterfeit glycerin, it turned out, had come from a country that the United States is helping to become a major trader in world markets, the People's Republic of China. This state-owned company in Beijing, Sinochem International Chemicals Company, sold the tainted glycerin, certifying it as 98% pure. But Sinochem wasn't the manufacturer, another Chinese company was, and the FDA wanted to know that company's identity so they could stop them from manufacturing any more of it. So a year ago last August, the U.S. Embassy in Beijing arranged for the FDA to meet with Sinochem and Chinese authorities.
And we said, you're buying from someone who isn't really selling glycerin. Help us with it. Help us figure out who made it. And both the Chinese authorities and Sinochem said, we weren't aware that this was a problem. If we figure it out, we'll let you know.
What do you mean, if we figure it out?
Well, that's what they said.
But U.S. officials had reason not to believe the Chinese. According to this document, a U.S. translator had concluded that Sinochem officials did know who had made the poison. But because the FDA has no jurisdiction in China, it couldn't force them to name the company. You've been asking, apparently, for about a year.
That's right.
And you're saying that the Chinese, who have to know the company that made this, are not telling you who it is?
We aren't certain who made it, no.
It is remarkable that we don't know today where this came from, and you know, it's more than a year after this happened.
Dr. Kim Solez, a physician in Edmonton, Canada, has worked to end poisonings like the one in Haiti.
The big concern is, do we know that this is stopped? We know that it's stopped in Haiti, but do we know that it's not still going on in other countries? The only way to know that is to find out where it came from in China and whether that source is still continuing to produce this toxic mixture.
Investigators had another reason to worry about Sinochem. According to this FDA memo, they learned that a German company had recently blacklisted Sinochem for trying to sell another impure pharmaceutical additive. But in Haiti, the obvious question is, why would anyone add poison to glycerin in the first place? Health officials say they see a profit motive. They found that in previous poisonings in other countries, diethylene glycol had been substituted for glycerin in medicine apparently because it was cheaper, at least 50% cheaper. The Chinese were not implicated in those incidents. Could it have been an accident that this was being done by whatever that firm was in China?
Sure, anything's possible.
But you're skeptical.
We're skeptical.
It was counterfeit. It was specifically designed to superficially look exactly the same as the non-toxic substance. This was something done on purpose, but the purpose was a monetary one. It was not with the intent to kill people.
We tried to talk to Sinochem in Beijing and to its sister company Sinochem USA in New York's World Trade Center, but they would not respond. Neither would the Chinese embassy in Washington nor the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Trade. But the Chinese aren't the only ones keeping silent. For more than a month, we tried to get an on-camera interview with the U.S. State Department so we could ask why they hadn't publicly pressured the Chinese to turn over the name of the manufacturer. Finally, a State Department spokesman told us there would be no interview. He said he couldn't find anyone, quote, interested in going on camera to discuss the subject.
To ignore it, I think, would be a crime.
Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi, a Democrat, has frequently criticized administration policy toward China. We cannot get through the Iron Curtain at the State Department to have them make any kind of statement at all about any of this.
Well, the State Department is an arm of the administration, and the administration policy has been very clear on China, and that is that money rules.
What are you saying?
I'm saying that the only consideration that is important in Washington, D.C. is the money that is involved in the U.S.-China trade.
The World Health Organization, of which China is a member, hasn't been aggressive either in trying to hold China accountable. You'd think they would say, look, let us know. Who, why, what, how did it happen? And do it publicly.
Well, the WHO tends to be non-confrontational in these situations, and I think that's been the case here as well.
This is the sixth mass tragedy, mass poisoning in the 20th century from diethylene glycol. This shouldn't have happened, and unfortunately, the lives of children were lost, and if that doesn't move our State Department or move the President, and I know the President is concerned about children's issues.
Yes, he is.
If that doesn't move this country to determine who the manufacturer was, then I quite frankly can't tell you what would.
The worrisome part is it could happen to other kids. We don't want this to happen to any kids anywhere in the world. Unfortunately, it takes a wake-up call on the backs of babies to get governments to change what they do and how they do it.
I think about him lying next to me, hugging me, and kissing me. I dream of him putting on his father's shoes and hat and running around so that people can see him.
I know that my country is poor, but people should never forget that we're all human on this earth. Even though I may not find justice here in Haiti, up in heaven, in God's eyes, a crime is a crime.
You may speculate, what would the reaction be if this type of poisoning had happened here in the United States? Well, it did, 60 years ago. Some 100 Americans died after diethylene glycol was put into an antibacterial medicine. The uproar here was so intense that it led directly to the passage of the historic Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, the most important drug safety law in this nation's history.